Hello, this is Alex Calvo Garcia. You're listening to the Iron Hour podcast.
Well, it's pre-season. We're back with the Iron Hour podcast. It's Barry here, hosting as usual, not always, but usual. A big shout out to our sponsors, Best Blank Wholesale. I've started the season as we mean to go on. This is season 4, episode 1, and that is the first and probably last mention of our sponsors because Gareth does give me a telling off every week. Speaking of Gareth, I'm going to introduce our panel now. So first up, it is Gareth, a man who has been in more videos than Mia Khalifa, Mr. Iron Army. How are you doing, Gaz?
I'm really good, thank you. And it's actually Best Blanks Wholesale.
What do I say? Do I miss the S?
You missed the S.
Yeah, it's that place.
You say whole ale.
Well, look, all I would say, Gareth, is that's not the first time Barra fires blanks when talking about Mia Khalifa. So,
We've gone in early doors. I love it. Yeah, our sponsors, Best Blanks Wholesale. So, huge shout out to them. You'll have heard who's next up on the panel this week. It's a man who will respond to any inquiries about
yes, go on, plug it. Yes,
broken roads, broken walls, potholes. All he asks in return is that you take his picture for the local rag. It's of course none other than Max Bell. Good evening.
You know, Barra had warned me. He's thinking, right, I need to do a joke. I'm thinking, please plug the fence. Big shout out to any Scunthorpe fans who live down Wilkinson Way. I love you.
It was like the end of, I don't know, the last gig at Glastonbury, that one. This has been great. Our third panellist today is a man who's recently on a scouting mission for Scunthorpe United. He's been abroad, he's been over to Sardinia looking for any local talent. And the best he's come up with is he's managed to re-sign Richie Bennett. It is, of course, none other than Marco Policia. I'm gonna go on all fancy, a bit continental today.
Yeah. Yeah, mate, whatever works for you. Yeah, glad to be back. Not much of a tan. Although being born in Italy and having half my family Italian, I didn't get the skin. So yeah, I go quite red. But yeah, no, loved it. I'm rejuvenated and ready to discuss our signings so far.
Well, you're a changed man, and I'm getting mixed signals from you there, Marco, because we've got the Stella hat, but a can of Coca-Cola. Is this a new season, new me?
Yeah, no, maybe not new season. Just going through a house move, so I've been packing up tonight and.
Go on, show us your setup. Pan the camera around, Mark.
I'm living like a uni guy at the minute, and I'm watching the TV on the floor.
Yeah, that's our copyright infringement.
Yeah, but for I don't even know what advert it was. Comfort. Yeah. Other wash powders are available.
Glad you got there. You get a job on Humberside, you will, mate. You're right.
So when Marco gets sent a load of white powder in the post, that's going to be his excuse to the police. It's not what it looks like, fellas. Yeah. It's not. Ignore the Stella hat. It's not what it looks like.
Don't make a joke about white powder. God. There's a few at the tip of my tongue there, and I've decided not to go there, get myself in trouble. So there's so much to discuss. We've got the player situation at Scunthorpe United, of course, the incomings, the outgoings, the renewals, and the one uncertainty, which I think we all know it isn't such an uncertainty. I think we can all safely say it's looking like Maxi Coogan probably isn't going to be here next season, although, of course, we don't know officially yet. We'll talk about that, and we'll preview tonight's game away at Boxford, the first game of pre-season, and we'll look at what we're expecting. But I should let you know, coming up on today's podcast, we also have a little bit of an insight on two of the new additions to the squad at Scunthorpe United. So we'll hear from Will Stanza, Gainsborough Trinity fan, as we kind of look at what Dec Howe brings to the table. And of course, the big one, a bit of a coup for us, really. We've got Rob Watson, who was the lead phase coach in the old academy. And of course, he spent much time with Joey Dawson. So a 10-minute chat coming up later on as we look at what Joey Dawson can bring the iron and what he adds to the squad. So let's kick off with those additions then. Max, I'll go to you first. The incomings. Let's pull up the list. Seamless, although this is. And again, it's episode 1. Let's butcher the names early doors. So we've got Jean Bellahun. What do you reckon to that?
I think you lost confidence in how you were pronouncing that halfway through his surname. Because it went up a couple of octaves and it was Jean Bellahun. As if, he was sort of half Pride of Miss Jean Brodie and half Jimmy Five Bellies.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think JB. JB.
Like how all the Chelsea fans gave up trying to pronounce Cesar Azpilicueta and just started calling him Dave.
I thought you were going to say John Terry. I know they've got a low IQ, but so JB arrives, predominantly a centre back, a position we needed.
Yeah, I think so. Particularly, if we revert to playing five at the back at any point this season, as I think a few Iron fans have speculated over the summer, particularly if Coogan departs as well. And look, we know that we're going to be adjusting to a higher level, and being defensively competitive and making sure, especially at home, that you're mean enough that you give the likes of Whitehall and Roberts and your players in the final third a chance to get you points out of games. You need your defenders. You need a solid platform. So, in actual fact, of all the signings we've made so far, I think he's potentially the most important.
Position we probably needed strength and cover in, Marco. But what does that do for the centre-back situation? Because with the departure of Michael Clunan, I'll be honest, my money was probably on Andy Boyce taking the captaincy. Do you agree with that? Do you think he will be the first name in Butler's mind when it comes to the captaincy? And what do you think this addition of a new centre-back means for Andy Boyce?
Yeah, I think Boyce will definitely be throwing his hat into a ring regarding the captaincy. I say that. I feel like his leadership probably just comes natural. I know we've discussed off air previously where we understand why Butler rates him so high, because it's sort of like having another manager on the field. And he obviously trusts him. So I can see him being first choice captain. Look, whether that means he's going to play every game or not, who knows? So obviously vice captain may still have a big role to play. But no, it looks a good signing. JB, is that what we're going for? JB. I didn't watch Ballers League. I'm not going to pretend.
Just as well, from what I've read.
I'm not going to pretend that I did. It's not for me.
Your tweet was class on that, by the way. Just remind everyone what you said.
I'm not judging a player because he's not scored against Angry Ginger or something. Yeah, it's not for me. So, look, we can only judge him off what he's going to be coming into the club and doing. I think we'll give everyone a fair crack of it before we start slagging him off. But no, look, I think Max made a real good point with sometimes this season we may resort to a back five, depending on where we are, who we're against, and what's needed. So, yeah, interested signing, and I think one that was definitely needed and possibly points more fingers towards Coogan leaving than staying, which is disappointing because I thought he had a really good season. I think he's been a really good player for us. But look, if he's moving up a level, and you can't begrudge him.
No.
Can I just jump in there on JB? It's a good signing, but for me, it's a commitment thing. You know what I mean, if you're leaving Gateshead with however many games left at the end of the season to go and play Ballers League, and he said in one of his tweets somewhere to do his it's to do with off-field business and things like that. But I just think
can I jump one in there while we're on about this? I'd read a fan saying that's how it all came out. Like Gateshead were not actually paying his wages.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
So I don't know what relevance that is, but I just read that.
Well, if they're not paying his wages, then yeah, fair enough. You go out and get paid doing something else, don't you?
Yeah.
So yeah. All right, I'll shut up.
Well, no, listen, it's an open table. We talk things, we discuss things. Not always be factually correct.
I'd not read that, heard that, so yeah.
Well, my sources, who are occasionally wrong, do tell me that was the case. But let's have a look. I'll start with you guys. So, Ollie Ewing, I think for me, that is probably the signing I'm most excited about. Mm-hmm. Being described as a midfield maestro, and do love a player who can get bums off seats, excite us.
Yeah, hopefully. You know what I mean? It's a big thing, isn't it? Midfield maestro. You expect big things straight away, you know. You can imagine his first touch, shanking it straight out.
Yeah.
no pressure. But yeah, no, it's from what, you know, you read and seen, it looks like he could be a good player for us. You know, when hopefully he'll play a bit higher up than Clunan did, a bit further up there in the middle. And I think you mentioned on Twitter, was it, about Rowley dropping back?
That'd be what I'd chuck in the ring there. I'd say Rowley would be. I'm not sure we'll go for a CDM. I think we'll chuck Rowley into that position and look to promote him into that role, and then, like you say, Ewing then could take that more offensive role.
Yeah.
Do you think I could be right there?
Yeah, I think you could be right, unless we sign somebody else.
Yeah.
Unless we sign another midfielder, and then it just throws it all out the window, doesn't it?
Of course it does.
The only thing I would say to perhaps slightly counter that speculation is if you do that with a back four, that's quite an attacking setup in the middle of the park.
Yeah.
Post promotion, we all know Butler's inclination for five at the back, especially away from home. Look, I'm a big believer in you sign the best player available, irrespective of what your system preferences may or may not be. But if you're thinking of a three of what, is he going to slot into there with Scales and Rowley as well?
And then where does Brogan fit into that?
Yeah, and look, those are good questions, and I'm not necessarily sure that we have the answer to yet. Some of the pre-season friendlies might be the answer to that, but also they might not be. Butler might not be sure. And competition for places is not a bad thing, particularly in the middle of the park, which we all know is such an important position. So there's places up for grabs. Go get them.
Quite right. Marco, I know the one player that you're probably most excited about would be Dubameze.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And look, I'm saying that as if I know anything about him. He just looks like it.
He looks a player, doesn't he?
Yeah, seeing what Charlie said, seeing like the little snippets, and how with a name like Eze, no pressure.
Yeah, because that worked with Amiobi, didn't it?
Well, listen,
don't work on time, but I can see him. I can see him. I did this last year with Carlton, and it didn't come true to the final third.
Yeah, but 20 minutes? What?
Yeah. Well, look, I think Eze could be an important player, and look, let's hope he's scoring in the playoff final again. But yeah, no, I think he looks really exciting, and look, to be a club the size of Bolton, you've got to have a little bit of something about you, haven't you? So yeah, let's hope he can come and do his stuff at Glanford Park.
Just go on, Gareth. You go.
Oh, I'm going to say he definitely talks a good game. I don't know if you heard his interview with Ollie Turner. Was it on Humberside?
Yeah.
He was. He talks a good game. So if he plays like he talks,
well, I'd be like Ronaldo.
Yeah, that's what people say about Max.
Yeah, was it talks like Tony Adams, defends like Ross Millen. It will be interesting. Will he start? I perhaps think he might if Roberts isn't fit for the start of the season. But if let's say hypothetically Roberts were fit, does he, after how we ended last season, does he get into that front three? If we play with the front three, I accept that the settled question we would be having if we went to a back five would be very, very different. But does he? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I'm not sure. I don't think I've gone into a season for quite a while so not sure about who starts or not. Yeah, apart from Mason Campbell, at this moment in time, I'm pretty sure he starts.
I'm being very premature, but I think a front three, like you said, if we do play a three, of Eze, Whitehall, and a fit Roberts on paper looks exciting and something I can definitely get behind. But look, we've got a lot of strikers in the door at the minute. Obviously, Dawson's going to be wanting to get minutes, and obviously House made that step up. So it'll be really interesting to see. I'm with Max. It's going to be a really interesting season. And if pre-season's like last year, I still didn't know the starting lineup for the first game.
Plus, he's just there making wholesale changes at half.
If I see when we play Bottisford, if I see Will Evans in centre mid, I'm done.
Yeah, I'm checking out. Before we get on to those two new attacking options of Dawson and Howe, let's just have a look at the Iron Hour podcast latest acquisition. Of course, we're sponsoring the home shirt this season of Brandon Horton, a player who, looking at fans' reactions, has kind of mixed reviews because Donny and Chesterfield fans seems to rate him quite highly. Maybe not quite the same to be said for those in the northeast, Gareth.
Yeah, but it's horses for courses, isn't it? Dill rates him highly.
Yeah.
It was like he was telling me all about him when we played Chesterfield, and he ripped as a new one, and he loves to whip the ball in and stuff like that. And Dill's had a couple of mates that played with him and against him. But yeah, but it's same with any football fans, isn't it? Any clubs, you know, some players, some fans will rate a player, others will, you know, tease the worst thing since sliced bread. The proof's in the pudding. It's watching and seeing how he responds. You know, he knows Butler from his time at Donny. I guess that's helped him come here as well to Scunthorpe. But yeah, he's just got to settle in and see how he goes. You can't judge him straight away from reading what others have said. So we've got to actually see him in the flesh playing and take it from there.
Max, Gareth picked up on something there about Butler having something of a relationship and knowing Brandon Horton. I've noticed a little bit of a trend here of us signing a lot of local lads and people that certainly the management team have come across before. And actually, that has shone through more this season than it has in any other season. Do you think that'll be a big thing for Butler's kind of buy-in? Is looking at people who live locally and have worked with him before, know what he's about, he knows what they're about, and he can trust them implicitly.
Yes, I think there's a little bit of that. I don't think it's the only factor. I think it also comes down to availability. You know, Joey Dawson was available. Obviously, the two lads we've signed from Gateshead have got experience at this level, and given Gateshead's previous off-field difficulties, not all of which were their own fault, players were available. And, you know, in a way, it's a bit like why Kingsland have been able to re-sign Clunan. If you are based or if you are from a certain area, then your willingness to go there and move there and live there and work there is going to be higher than it normally would. I mean, you know, I'm sure Truro this time of year is lovely. I don't desperately want to move down there and help them fix their fences though. So, you know, it's also about who is available and who you can afford. And I know there's been lots of chat this summer about what our budget is and isn't. So you just hope that we found the right players at the right value.
I thought my screen had frozen there. Marco was kind of like in a trance, just fixated with what Max was saying. It was actually quite cute, really beautiful stuff there. Let's
or the Stella has got to him. I wouldn't want to rule that out. It could be that.
Let's look at those two attacking options that I know are going to excite Scunny fans. So, Joey Dawson being the first one. And as I mentioned at the start of this podcast, let's listen now to what Rob Watson, the ex-phase lead at Scunthorpe United Academy, has to say about Joey Dawson. I'm joined now by a man who knows all too well what Joey Dawson is capable of. The former professional development phase coach for Scunthorpe United, obviously in the academy, and you were obviously at Barnsley as well. Very experienced when it comes to spotting and coaching that young talent. What can you tell us about Joey Dawson?
Well, I had the pleasure of meeting Joey when he was 8 years old. When I was working with the community trust team, we did an after-school club at Rawby, and that's the first time I ever saw Joey play. He'd been playing there in the after-school club. I'd had the pleasure of then taking the under-9s at the academy part-time. I spoke to obviously Andy and Joey's mum as well, and said it would be great if he came down. And he come down. He played with our under-9s a year earlier than he should have done. It was a bit where the rules were a little bit more relaxed then, where you could play a couple of under-8s in the under-9s. Joey played for us, and you know, he never looked back. He had a very good academy journey. Thing with Joey was he was in a really good team. There was Cam Wilson in that team, Dan Gallimore, a number of players that obviously made it pro for the football club. So he was surrounded by talent, and for anyone to make it in that group, you had to be a good player. Thing with Joey was Joey had a really good work ethic, wanted to win, very good winning desire. He had a very good, he won't mind me saying, he had a very good polite football arrogance. And what I mean by that was he knew he was good and he was very confident on the ball. He was not scared to make mistakes. He was not scared to try new things. And that's what was exciting. He was always exciting to watch. You always wanted him on the ball. There were certain players in the academy that you wanted on the ball all the time. And he was one of them.
Of course, we know what it's like in these academies. You're not always trucked into your preferred position. It's definitely about growth and development. What position was he kind of earmarked for in the early days? Was he always an attacking player?
Yeah, he was always an attacking player. Kind of against what his dad was. Really, he was the opposite. Joey's an attacking player. He did play in central midfield quite a bit. Obviously, at the academy, you play winger, you play midfield. But usually in the younger age groups, you're either an attacker or a defender. You get exposed to all of it. But no, you can tell with certain players that they're destined for either the goals they're going to score in or the ones they're going to defend in. And Joey was always going to be one who was to score the goals.
And what kind of player is he on the ball? Is he a man that will... Because he's been described towards as kind of a CAM. So is he more of an attacker, or would you class him more as a midfielder? And if he is either, will he come and get the ball and link play up, or is he one to finish chances?
Joey would probably, to compare him to a bit of a Harry Kane. He was very good in the box, very good finisher, but he liked to usually drop in and get the ball. But equally, he'd happily run in behind or get in the box and be on the end of a cross.
We can expect Wayne Rooney at the twilight of his career. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it'd be nice. It'd be very good to see him at that level. But no, Joey would usually hold up the ball really well, or he'd flick it on and then get himself in the box. Typical modern day striker now. Obviously, though, he was very clever with his movement. It wasn't always random. It was always to the advantage of the team and to himself. Predominantly, he scores goals, and that's what you want from any striker. And he's done that throughout his time at throughout the academy. Always scored a bag full of goals every season. Obviously, his time at Celtic, I used to always keep an eye out for him. And again, very talented there, and was always on the score sheet. I think he scored a couple against Rangers at Celtic Park. Again, if you ever watch those clips or them goals, he's got in the box, he's got himself on the end of crosses. And I think, obviously going into the National League, you need a little bit of that. You need to be able to hold up the ball. You need to be able to get on the end of crosses, because the game is, as you'll know as a fan, it's very up and down in the National League. 1 minute you're attacking, 1 minute you're defending. So I think the academy experience and his time at Celtic will certainly help him for next season.
What's it like, do you think, being the son of Andy Dawson and the nephew of Michael Dawson? It must throw a massive shadow.
I think Joey's his own player. He's his own character. Obviously knowing Andy really well, having worked with Andy as a coach throughout the academy, he's really level-headed, and I think that rubs off on Joey. Andy was one of the easiest parents to ever work with. He used to say to me, as long as Joey's enjoying it and Lucas is enjoying it, then I'm happy. And this was somebody who had bags of experience, worked with many managers, many good coaches, and he made my life easier in terms of that. And I think if he has that impact on Joey, I think it just shows on the pitch. There's no pressure. He's not trying to live up to be anyone but himself. And that was the same for all the boys.
Can you remember when he first broke into the first team then, as someone who'd been involved in the academy? Was it a proud day for you?
Yeah,
surely it was.
It always is. Obviously, I was at Barnsley at the time. I remember messaging him saying, congratulations and stuff. Ultimately, for anyone in the academy, you want to see players on the pitch from the first team. I was very proud when Cam Wilson had made it through the ranks and scored his first goal. I was very lucky to sign him at under 11s. Harvey Cribb was another one who I was very lucky to see. And I think it's the time that you're in the game. If you stay in the game long enough, you will see players that you've worked with. I used to be surrounded by coaches that would speak about players older. So, for example, Kyle Wotton, who's doing fantastic at Stockport, the coaches I work with used to talk about him. He was a little bit older when I started at the academy. He was in the 18s when I started in the first team. So I've not really seen his full journey, but a number of coaches that work at the academy, like Andy Sharp, obviously Tony Dawes, Nathan Robinson, they'd seen his whole journey. So to see anyone make it in the first team, it's always a proud moment. But you want them, once they've made it in the first team, you just want to see them there every week. And being in the academy system, that's not going to happen all the time. They have to take the chances when they get the chances. They need the right guidance around them. Fans need to have patience with them. I think sometimes for any young player to break into a first team now, they're not going to be the finished product. They're not going to be a Wayne Rooney that broke into Everton at 16. He was a man before he was a boy as such. So I think fans just need to have patience with younger players. The club itself looks after younger players brilliantly, I think. Obviously, Andy Butler, the manager, he's worked in academy football. He understands what it takes. He's gone through the system himself. So for someone to have, for a young player to work under a manager that's gone through that and worked in an academy system, I think they're in the right place.
Well, whilst I've got you, we're having this conversation as we enter the third season now without the club having a proper academy or, in fact, any really junior football feeding into the first team. As someone who was involved in the academy and was there actually at the end when it did close down, what would you like to see from the club in regards to that? Because I imagine you're the same position as I am. The club needs academy football, it needs junior football. Without that, you'll be forever paying payers more than you need to.
Yeah. I think it is important. It'd be fantastic if they restarted an academy. I'll be as honest as I can be. I completely understand why they haven't yet. The priority at the minute is completely the first team and getting them back to where they need to be, and that's EFL football. Obviously, with an academy system, it does cost. People think it's free and it's cheap. It's not. It does cost because you need for it to be done right. You do need full-time staff. I think if there was ever to bring the academy back, it should be phased in, maybe like a 16s and 18s, and then 12 to something. But I think the EFL funding is huge. It really does make a difference. I was obviously saying to you before that a lot of academies wouldn't run without that funding. Obviously at the club itself, they've got the community trust that do a very good program. I know they've just signed some form of partnership with 780. 780 is a fantastic program within the town. It would be just nice if everybody come together and did something within the club. But I think it will take EFL football to probably get that back and it to be in the right place. Me personally, it'd be great if was to come back and do that at some point. But it's for me, it's more. It's great to see homegrown players come through an academy, come through a club, wear the badge week in, week out, and then make the first team debut. Nothing is better for an academy coach and an academy player. And you've always got, fans have always got a liking to a local player who's come through the ranks. And I think Scunthorpe's been quite blessed with them and sometimes not being able to see the end product. So Kyle Wotton's a perfect example. He went from nines all the way through and now he's carved a fantastic career for himself. It would have been great if he did that in a Scunny shirt. So, going back onto Joey, it's fantastic that he comes back. I think Joey's gone to Celtic. He's had to live away. He's going to come back a completely different player. So it's really exciting. But for me, just to sum it up, it would be fantastic if the club did get an academy again one day. Knowing the people that are running the club at the minute, I think if that EFL funding was there and we was in the Football League again, I think they would do it immediately because they want it to. But the priority in the minute is obviously the first team. So it is completely understandable. But I do think it would be certainly one of the biggest things on the wish list if they did get back in the Football League.
Finally then, just before I let you go, Rob.
Yeah.
He's had the 2 ACL injuries.
Yeah.
That would be career-ending for a lot of players. How much do you think that might have affected his style of play?
Yeah, it's really hard to comment in terms of that, but I've seen many players have ACL injuries. It's not the doomsday injury that it used to be, 10 years ago. Players come back from ACL injuries and they're far better player than there was beforehand. The treatment the players get now, the rehab the players get now, it's just completely different to what it used to be. So I wouldn't even come into question regarding Joey or any other player. You just got to look at Ross Barrows, someone who come through the academy as well. He's had his ACL. Ross is the kind of character who'll come back stronger. And with an ACL injury now, it's generally down to the player. I think if the player works hard in the rehab, does everything that the physios ask of them, they do everything right, they'll come back perfectly fine. They will. It's usually players that if they have an ACL injury, maybe at the end of their career, they don't put the heart and soul into the rehab. It's a little bit different. But Joey's young, he's very hungry. Same with Ross Barrows. They're two people who would do everything by the book to make sure that they're playing football for Scunthorpe United. So it won't even come into question for me. It was just obviously just unfortunate. You can do it. You could walk down the stairs and trip and hurt your ACL. It's just very unfortunate that it's happened. But no, it's certainly something. It wouldn't even be in my thought process. If he's fit and he's ready and he's done all his rehab, you've got a great player on your hands.
Well, Marco, that was quite interesting because Rob, of course, touched on the two ACLs. And, Rob's theory there was that the two ACLs don't worry him because they were, in fact, on different legs. So it's not like the, reoccurrence of an old injury. It is just pure bad luck. Do you subscribe to that belief, or are the injuries a little bit of a concern for you?
Yeah, look, I mean, Rob's in a far better position to be commenting on stuff like that than me. So you have to take it at face value. And look, but if he gets through, I think we've seen the videos of pre-season so far. I think if he gets through an Andy Butler pre-season, he should put him in good stead.
Good point.
Yeah, so look, I feel like I don't think Butler, regardless of the budget, I know Max touched on that, we aren't in a position to be carrying any players. Obviously, mentioning the local thing, Dawson's a local lad, possibly not on a huge contract such as what we've had previously. And look, I think you're right with the local lads. I know we were linked to Muldoon, another one, which obviously maybe Butler's been stung with Clunan and it's hurt a little bit, so he's thought, right, let's just keep him local now. No more Southerners. But yeah, look, it's interesting. But yeah, really good to hear about Dawson, and he's one I'm really excited to see this season. And I think touch wood, staying injury free, with Whitehall as well, and Howe, I think we look quite good up front. So yeah, it'd be exciting to see.
Gareth, Joey Dawson's addition is obviously something that's got fans talking. Now, if I'm being completely honest, if he'd come through any other academy other than Scunthorpe, I'm not quite sure there would be that such level of excitement. I certainly think there'd be a lot more trepidation towards his injury record. Are you excited? Are you as excited as other fans are? Or are you looking at it and going, it's just another play?
I think, yeah, it's good that we're giving him a chance, but there is that risk, isn't there? I know obviously he's an ACL on both legs. There's still that risk there, but it's, obviously Butler and company have looked at it and thought it's worth taking. Obviously he's been up at Celtic before, which I'm sure they've had good coaches up there and, learnt a lot as well while being up there. So it will be interesting to see how he copes down here. But once again, it's like, I think Marco said earlier about the forwards we've got at the club now. You'd expect Whitehall to be starting every game. And it's where do Dawson and where do Howe, fit in? Really.
How do we make it work?
Hey.
Boom, boom. To be honest, it's a really good question. In a way, that the fact that we have gone out and signed strikers, potentially plural. And I know there's a bit of discussion as to is Dawson is he like a second striker?
Yeah,
is he a number 10?
As Rob just said there, he does seem more as that forward style player, and he says he can do that Wayne Rooney job. He can drop in deep if he needs to, but for him, he's a goal scorer, Max.
Yeah, and so again, it's a bit like Marco said. Rob is very, very well qualified on this subject. That if the signings of him and Howe are to be played as we think we are, then I think that makes 5-3-2 more likely. Particularly as if you were playing that system, you could potentially have Dawson as a 10 behind a front two, because you'd still have a core 5 central players behind you and then a bit of width on top.
Yeah.
But Gareth touched on it there. If we look realistically, we're looking at what we've now got: Whitehall, Beck, if we're playing players through the middle, probably Carlton as well, that might, we'll see as to what order that's in. But if that is 5-3-2, somebody's going to have to be fourth choice. Somebody's going to have to be fifth choice.
And I just struck in there Alfie Beeston, who might not necessarily be the first name that comes to your mind when you're talking about strikers, but Butler did play him there quite often throughout the season, particularly when we were in need of a striker. I mean, I think he kicked the season off playing centre forward last season against Brackley and scored 2 goals.
Yeah, and look, we went away to Scarborough and we played Beeston and Roberts up front together with Fishburn on the bench. So, look, genuinely, you do never know. And only time will tell. Last season was actually a great example of how you can have a vision for the first 2 months of the season and it doesn't work out for whatever reason and things change. So that may or may not also be the case in the National League this season. It does leave me with questions. But just one final point about Dawson and Howe is that they're not big swings financially. They just won't be. Looking at where they've come from, Dawson in terms of his age and his injury record. Look, we've re-signed Callum Roberts with his hit and miss injury record, so Dawson's not the only player on that scale.
Well, can I just jump in there? But that's the point, isn't it? Players of that caliber, you're only really getting them. We're only really getting them if there's an asterisk against the name, and that asterisk is either age or injury.
Of course it is. But last season we were at the 6th tier, Barry. You're only getting any kind of player if there's a certain level of asterisk. That's inevitable, and I think psychologically that was the biggest thing that we had to get our head round. I think is when you're looking for a little bit of quality in those key moments in tough games, that actually, even comparing them against players we had in League Two probably wasn't fair. Yeah, because that was 2 divisions higher.
Yeah, no, quite. Okay, Dec Howe then, he was the player that seemed to be, well, one that I know for a fact Andy Butler has pursued for a while. I know a lot of fans have been talking about him. I think Dec Howe touched on it in his interview about how Butler kind of had told him that he was interested before. And I know his name had been mentioned many times, as I say, from lots of Scunny fans. So let's hear now from Will Stanza, Gainsborough Trinity fan, and he tells us all about Dec Howe. Well, let's have a little bit of an insight then on Dec Howe, one of our newest recruits, a striker, and someone that Scunny fans have been calling out for probably the best part of 9 to 12 months now. So I'm joined by Will Stanza, Gainsborough Trinity fan, and I think a few Scunny fans will probably know you, Will. Let's talk Dec Howe then.
Yeah, I'm gutted he's left us, to be fair, because he's been quality for us last 2.5 years, banging the goals in. But he's deserved this chance to go a bit higher up.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? He will feel at 27 years of age, he's earned his stripes now. And I think you would think, well, if his opportunity hadn't come this season, it might not have come.
Yeah, exactly, definitely. Because he got the champ before, he was at Cleethorpes, I think.
Yes.
It was either Darlington or Alfreton. And he didn't really get much of a look in there.
No.
Which is a bit of a shame, but he probably wasn't quite ready.
As a Scunny fan, I think you're looking at it and going, it's great to see a local lad, someone who came through the academy back. But the point is, it's still a bit of an unknown to us. You've obviously seen him over the last 2.5 years. What kind of a player is he?
He's a great player. 9 times out of 10 and that, he's going to put it in the back of the net. If he gets the right service and that, like he has done for us.
I guess physically, you're looking at him and, he's quite well built. But someone had described him to me as being quite similar, not physically, but stylistically in terms of his play, being quite similar to Billy Sharp. Is that how you would see him, kind of a bit of a poacher, a fox in the box? Or actually, is he a player to come in and get the ball?
No, I'd probably say a poacher, to be fair. He's always there abouts.
And what in terms of his ability to link play up, is that not really his game, or has he got the legs for that?
Yeah, he has. He's got the legs on that, definitely, for that link up play.
And then I guess just looking ahead, let's look at this goals tally. 56 games this season, 39 goals. I think he was the second highest goal scorer in the FA Cup. The full version of the FA Cup. Other than goals, what are you kind of expecting from Dec Howe over this next season?
I don't know. I just hope he gets his chance. To be fair, like it's a bit of a. Personally, I think it's a bit of a step up on that from what he's used to. But if he's given a chance on that and time and patience, I think he'll do all right.
And obviously, your manager is Russ Wilcox, so he's his experience. He's a well-established manager that's coached him. You would like to think, he's going there under Russ's kind of blessing and recommendation to Scunthorpe.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it's probably helped that Russ has probably had a little bit of a point in his decision to go there. He's probably had good words about it, so that's probably why he's done it.
Finally, then, do you think there's any chance he might be returning on loan at some point in the season? I guess I would hope not, but there's always that possibility.
I'd hope so, but I can't see it. I think he'll get a chance.
Okay, then, Mako, we've gone through the acquisitions. Let's have a look at some of those players that are staying. So let's go through the names of the players that are under contract and or have been renewed this season. I'll name them all, and you pick some out and tell me what you think. So we've got Alfie Beeston stopping on. Danny Whitehall, of course, signing that 2-year deal. Andy Boyce stopping on for the extra season. Huge news that Callum Roberts staying on. Rowley, which I think we probably knew, didn't we, based on his interview on Humberside on the Open Top Bus Tour. Brogan's got the extra year. Barrows, I think, is an unspecified period of time. Is that right?
Yeah, there's been big rumours doing around that it's 6 months. Which, if you don't specify amount of time in the contract, makes me think that it's maybe true. Because if it was a year, you'd just say it was a year. But it wouldn't surprise me if there was maybe a little option there. If it's say 6 months with an extension, if the rehab goes well, or something like that, wouldn't shock me.
Before I name them all, then I realise this could get tedious. I realise that about halfway through that list. Michael, let's talk about a few of those players then. So, Joe Starbuck's the other one. Should we talk about Starbucks and Barrows and what you think will happen at that right back situation?
The standout one for me, obviously we'll come on to Whitehall with a 2-year contract.
Yeah.
We was all very hopeful he stayed, but 2 years was just sort of a piss take. Yeah, big goal for him. And genuinely. So, yeah, really exciting. I'm really happy to get that over the line on a 2-year contract. So, obviously, a bit of stability for him and his family also. He and others settled quite well. He obviously enjoys his time. It's working. He's scoring. And like we said last year, in some ways, which is crazy, he was more key to the team than Roberts. When we
definitely.
When we didn't have Whitehall, we really did struggle. And look, we only saw a fully fit Whitehall for 2/3 of the season. So if we can get him fit and firing for the start, no, really happy with that one. With the right back situation, obviously, Starbuck did okay when called upon. I know he didn't get tested.
Barra doesn't rate him, though. Barra doesn't rate him.
I think he's harsh, innit? I don't want to dig people out. I don't like digging players out, but I was surprised that he'd been given anything more than a 6-month deal. I think 2 years.
I think he'll be a squad player, and look, we need those squad players. Obviously,
but then who else? Who are you starting at right back?
Well, this is the problem, isn't it? Because Barrows is injured, right? So this is the point, isn't it? I genuinely don't know who. When we get the fixture list on Wednesday and we find out what we're doing first game of the season, I don't know who's playing at right back. That's the one position I'm actually most unsure about.
I think
more than goalkeeper.
Well, I guess. I'm still expecting somebody else to come in that position. But what were you going to say there, Marco?
I'm with you. I'm really sceptical of the right back, but again, I will hold on to judgment because I thought the same with Barrows last season.
Yeah.
And
he was awesome, wasn't he?
He did fantastic until the injury. So, look, I'm hoping Starbucks obviously surprised me and you. But, yeah, look, I don't know where we've got it from because when he was called upon, he did really well.
We've never lost a game. We won all 12 games.
Yeah. I suppose he's Marmite and we're just not on board at the minute. But, look, I'm happy to be proved wrong.
Yeah.
I think in the last pod I said about him, and it's that first 20 minutes for me.
Yeah.
It just takes me ages to get into the game. But once he's in the game, I think he's all right. I feel quite comfortable with him there. But the right back situation, we had Scales play there, didn't we?
And that makes me even more
ideal.
nervous.
I know it's not ideal, but it's, I don't think
I'd
it's
rather
Starbuck.
Regardless of what I've said, I'd rather have Starbuck at right back over Keane Scales. I think that's, and to be honest, I think Marco's just dropping off, so see you later, Marco. I think, to be honest, I'd be offended if I was Starbuck. If I've just signed a 2-year deal and he's looking at Keane and going, "Can you do a job for us?" I think it's like, well, what do you want me for,
Yeah, well, I get that. Yeah, so I can't see Scales starting over Starbuck, but I guess if they're looking at it and thinking, if Starbuck gets injured, in the meantime, who do we put there?
Of course.
It's going to be Scales, isn't it?
Guys, let's stick with you and have just 2 players. So, Rowley and Brogan. I mean, me, I really think Brogan's going to have a cracking season. I just think this is going to be his year. It's our year. I think this is his year, mate.
Yeah, but it's where does it? It depends what formation we play, doesn't it?
Yeah.
As to where he slots in. That's the thing. And I just think, will we see a settled formation in pre-season, or will things be moved around quite a lot to see, where players look best? And it's going to be a tough pre-season.
As daft as this sounds, guys, I was looking at those videos the club were putting out about the pre-season runs and the spin backs and stuff. And, you obviously can tell he's an incredibly fit lad. I was looking at those videos and I was going, do you know what? He stinks of Andy Butler. Like, Butler's going to be all over that, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. Those two will be up top. Rating each other.
Yeah. But he's there. For Butts, it's like, if you'll run for me, if you'll do everything, then I think he'd go with that over quality. I think he's that kind of manager.
I don't know. Would the fans want that, though? Or would the fans want the quality? He has got quality, though. That's the thing. He has got quality.
Yeah, he's class, isn't he?
He does. He's not just a runner. He does have quality as well. He's quite good on the ball. So yeah, it's just what formation we play as to where they all slot in, obviously.
Matt, let's look at some more players that are under contract. Tyler Denton, who I wouldn't say you were critical of, but he chucked a couple of comments his way. But would you say that he's kind of impressed you, particularly with the way he ended the season, being asked to do a role, more advanced and higher up the pitch? And we haven't talked about the fact that he's a legitimate option on the wing now, right?
Yeah, no, he is, and in a way, I prefer him as a winger than a fullback. Everybody jokes that every fullback is either a failed winger or a failed centre half.
I don't think he was a centre half, do you?
No, I don't. He's not a Murray Wallace, is he? So there's a couple of bits, isn't there? If and it's part of the question about right back as well. Is I've said it before and I will say it again. Particularly if you're playing forward or back, I've never bought in to the kind of modern obsession that a 5th or a 6th division fullback has to be all things to all men. Yeah. Pick 2 things and do them properly. Be sound defensively and have a decent positional sense. I don't expect or want the risks that often come with needing real, genuine quality from them going forward all of the time. Well, I almost do prefer Denton as a winger, to be honest with you.
I was going to say, doesn't that speak more to your brand of football and what you like to see, having seen you play in these charity games? I'm looking at you and going,
I wasn't offering overlapping runs up the wing. I can fucking tell you that much.
Your philosophy on football is, if you're in that back 4, do not go further than that halfway line at any point. Maybe if we're attacking a corner.
Yes, that's exactly what I was about to say. If you bring Gosling and we've got a set piece, that's fair game.
But your full backs and a winger better go stand on the halfway line.
I hear no lies. Look, it will be interesting, and I'm sure Butler has got a very hopefully tough, but also thought out pre-season program. I just think for what our expectations are, and again, I think realistically what the club will be hoping for behind the scenes, frankly, I would be surprised if we finished in the top half. If I was being hand on heart honest, so on that basis, it's right. How can we set up in a way where we're as competitive as possible, and it feels like we belong.
I think that's right. I think of course, the closer we get to the start of the season, we'll look at what we think will happen. We'll look at our pre-season predictions. For now, though, guys, let's stick to the kind of incomings and outgoings and those that are staying. 2 more players before we review tonight's game away at Boxford. Let's have a little look at Mason Campbell and Carlton Ubazonu, both of them stopping on. And what roles do you think both of those 2 players will have? Mason Campbell, we spoke to after the playoff final and certainly did hint that he was going and gunning for that number 1 spot. He wants regular football. And of course, Carlton, who went, until February without scoring a goal, scored the goals and the goal that did in fact win us promotion, and probably has to be argued, guys, was the most important player for us in the last 5 or 6 games.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, he got the goal at Hereford, didn't he?
And that was a huge goal, wasn't it? That
massive
goal.
Massive goal.
Did we win the playoffs?
Would we have been?
No. If we finish third, I don't think we go to. If we finish third, I don't think we go to Kidderminster and win. Gun to my head.
Yeah, I agree. So, guys, let's talk about those 2 players then. Thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think we're gonna have to bring another goalkeeper in for me, obviously. Just so even, and I don't know who it is. Ideally someone with experience.
If we do that then, so are you saying Mason then is the number 2? Or are you chucking him out on loan, or what's the situation there? If you're bringing in an experienced keeper...
I think we need to bring an experienced keeper in, just with being the National League. When he was asked to perform, Mason, last season, yeah, he performed, like against Cleethorpes in the Links Cup and things. But I think, he needs somebody with experience to learn from as well, to tutor him, because how old is he? He's only young, isn't he, still?
Put me on the spot now, mate. Give us that one and before you chuck a grenade in like that.
But anyway, he's young. Just
believe me. Oh, there he is. So what, like a player like Mark Howard coming in, is that the kind of experience you're looking for?
Well, it'd be ideal, wouldn't it? But I'm not going to say he's going to come in. But I just feel somebody with a bit more, who's played a bit more in National League, who's got that National League experience, somebody that can push Mason to be better, to fight for that number 1 spot. I just feel and the longer it's going on, the more speculation. You keep seeing names flying around on media of goalkeepers.
I have not seen a goalkeeper this season that we haven't been linked with.
That's what I mean. There's names here, there, and everywhere. And but
I think Mike Hickson's name got chucked about at one point.
But yeah, but I just feel that it's a big step, big ask for him to come in and be number 1.
Yeah,
I'm sure he's got he believes in himself and he'd love to be the number 1. But I just feel that we need to bring somebody in that's got some experience and that can guide him as well, that he can learn.
Max,
they've currently only got 1 goalkeeper. They're going to have to bring somebody in. We'll see who that is. I mean, as you said, they've been linked with quite a few people, but I don't think there's yet been anything more concrete than social media trying to put 2 and 2 together. So they're going to have to bring somebody in, whether or not that's as competition, whether or not that means there's a genuine fight for the number 1 role, or whether or not it's somebody who you go, no, actually, they're the number 1, and Mason, we're sorry, but you're the number 2 again. It's a critical role. It's so vitally important. A good goalkeeper makes everybody's lives easier. So I'm sure they'll be going through the book. I'm sure there'll have been lots of talks, and I'm sure they want to get something done sooner rather than later. We'll miss Ross. Whoever they bring in, they will miss Fitzsimmons.
I'm working on a theory right now that Mason Campbell's being earmarked for Scunthorpe United, first team football, and I also think this season might be that year too early. But then, if that is the working theory, then the challenge for the management will be, well, 1, how do you keep him interested, and how do you get him game time? So, honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if we actually end up signing 2 keepers and send Campbell out on loan. That would not shock me if Campbell's going out on loan somewhere.
It would. That would shock me. I think you keep somebody interested by running good training sessions, doing what they did last season, playing them in the cups or in friendlies, or if there's an injury or a suspension, by having good coaching. I'd be surprised if we do that, because are we realistically going to be able to sign and afford to sign 2 keepers better than that quality? I'm not sure that we would.
Well, if they were to go with that, I think what you'd do is you'd sign one that would be of a lesser quality. So you'd get a substitute for Mason Campbell, who's probably even younger and even more green, and then you'd get like your Mark Howard or something. But
then send that younger and greener version out on loan rather than Campbell.
Yeah. But then you don't sign him, do you?
Well, that just I worry about trying to be too clever with these things. Just go out, sign a good keeper, play him.
Nice. Right, let's look ahead to tonight's first pre-season friendly, the first pre-season friendly of the 25-26 season. The Iron travel to Bottisford Town. I make that a 4-mile trip just across past Asden. There you are. What are we looking for tonight then, Gaz? What are you hoping for? What are you looking to see from Andy Butler's men?
No injuries.
No injuries. You've gone early with that. It's game 1.
As always, it's plastic pitch. Little things like that, But no, I just think a good run out. Hopefully, see them pass the ball well, movement off the ball, goals. But if it doesn't come, I think just a run out really, because it's all right knocking the ball about on grass and in training and stuff like that. But you actually want to be up against people that you're not up against, and you don't know how they're going to play as such. So you want to be, just seeing a bit of quality really. And just keep the ball a bit, and like I say, goals. But I'm not going tonight. I'm at work, so yeah, I hope it goes well.
So you'll miss the goals if there are goals. Max, what are you looking for tonight? What's the big kind of key indicator you're hoping for to let you know that this will be a successful season?
A good quality pie. I'm going down to Birch Park, so it's important to support local football scene, and Botsford doing a huge amount in the community as well. So hopefully there'll be a good following, and a few quid in the coffers for them. I would like to see a system where I think, right, this is the plan. I'd like to see a setup where I think, right, I think that's what Butler's going to play. Maybe 7, even if it's just 8 and 9, and there's maybe 2 or 3 places up for grabs. Those big questions, I just want to see over the, not just in Botsford, but over the run of friendlies we've got, and either by art or by design, they've ended up with all their friendlies being a certain type of friendlies. Should we say? Can
I just ask you about?
Let's make them work.
Yeah, can I just ask you about that, Max? So if I think a lot of fans are expecting that we might employ a different formation away from home. We certainly might be a bit more pragmatic. I think it's very likely we're going to see 5 at the back more often this season away from home. How disappointing is it that actually we're maybe not facing a certain caliber of opponent where we can employ that tactic and see what it's like against the better teams?
Well, I'm a little bit surprised that one friendly at least isn't booked in against a side of our division or higher. Look, pre-season is pre-season is pre-season. It can be useful and it can be important if you make it work and you have a proper plan and you've got an end goal in mind and the steps in mind as to how you're going to get there. But at the end of the day, it is also a friendly away at Botsford on a Friday night. It's not the game, it's not the 90 minutes, it's not the day that's going to define not just this season, but then whether or not the next few seasons are successful. I am surprised, but if we start the season well, that first month, that first 6 weeks, nobody will care. But equally, if we don't, and people are looking for answers, why hasn't it started the way we hope?
I think we've lost you there, Max.
That might be one of the reasons.
Like you've been slowed down. Has somebody taken a remote and paused you?
Oh, okay.
You was like, oh, it's like watching Rocky 2, mate. I was just expecting you to say Adrian. If someone would say that's the most sense you've made on the podcast.
Sadly, it must be my internet signal. Or the football gods have had enough. They're thinking, we want to hear from Gareth. We want to hear from Gareth.
Okay, we want to hear from Gareth. So, Gareth, we'll give you the last word on today's podcast.
Bye.
Is that it? Come on, give us a bit more. What are you thinking?
No, I just think that, it's a new season, a fresh start for some players. I just think we've got to, as fans, as supporters, I think we've got to get behind the team. It's going to be a lot tougher this season. I think we're all aware of that. And we've just got to stick with the team, stick with the management.
Is the pressure off? Because maybe there isn't that expectation to get promotion like we've had in the last 2 seasons. So, is Butler got an easier crack at the whip almost?
I don't know if it'll be an easier crack at the whip, but I'd say there's not that pressure that I think everyone last season thought we should just walk it again, as we did the season before. It's National League North. But I think in National League, there's some tough teams in there. You've got York, you've got Forest Green. What else have we got in there? Rochdale.
Rochdale, of course. Halifax, they're looking...
I think
Southend.
I think Carlisle will be up there as well.
Yeah,
Morecambe. Morecambe if they survive.
But yeah, I just think
that... No, Morecambe...
Go on.
I was just going to say, obviously Morecambe have got financial issues, but I believe Carlisle have bounced back. They're the only side to have done it twice, I believe, where they bounced back immediately. So they're a very well backed side. There's nothing else to do in Carlisle, so I expect them to be right up there.
What's that then? Carlisle are the only team that have bounced back immediately twice?
Yes, I believe so. Yes,
that's some stat that, if true. If true, that's massive.
Yeah, Google.
Yeah. Okay, right. I'll tell you what, we'll wrap it up. Somehow we've got close to an hour, which is crazy because actually, this was meant to be the Iron Half an Hour podcast, but there you go. We just couldn't shut up. We're so excited for the season to start and we're still weeks away. But thank you again for listening to this episode of the Iron Half podcast, first of season 4 for us. A huge thank you to our sponsors, Best Blanks Wholesale. Fantastic little company, can I just say so? Again, have a smashing game at Botisford. We'll see you there. Up the iron.